I still remember the echo of that gavel hitting wood, the sound that shattered my entire world. 10 years? That's what the judge said. 10 years for a crime my daughter didn't commit. My disabled, soft-spoken 18-year-old girl, sentenced like a criminal, while the real monster sat smiling in the front row. Karen. The fluorescent courtroom lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale white glow on her smug face. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She enjoyed every second of it. My daughter Emma could barely breathe through her tears. The cuffs around her wrists looked like they were cutting into her skin. My wife sobbed beside me, whispering, "Why, God? Why her?" But I couldn't cry, not yet, because Karen didn't know who she'd just crossed. See, to the world, I was just a quiet father. The man who worked late nights, drove a black SUV, kept to himself. But I wasn't just any father. I was a Federal Bureau of Investigation agent, one who'd spent 15 years tracking criminals, who thought they could outsmart the system. And now the system had turned on my own child. Karen, the HOA president, had made it her mission to destroy us. She'd called my daughter a menace, claimed she threatened the neighborhood, lies, all of it. But she was clever, twisting small things into deadly accusations. When that sentence was handed down, something inside me switched. My training kicked in. My calm voice returned, and I whispered to my wife, "She thinks she won. She has no idea what's coming. Before you hear what happened next, tell me. If someone framed your child, how far would you go to clear their name?" Before all of this, before the courtroom, the handcuffs, and the headlines, life was painfully ordinary. We'd moved into Cedar Oaks, a quiet, manicured neighborhood on the edge of town, hoping for peace. My daughter Emma needed it. She was born with a mild neuromuscular condition that affected her balance and speech, but she never let it define her. At 20, she was taking online college classes in design and volunteering at the animal shelter down the road. Every morning, she'd wave to the neighbors, walking with her cane and that shy smile of hers that could soften anyone's heart, anyone except Karen. Karen lived 2 doors down, HOA president, self-appointed protector of property values, and the kind of woman who believed the world should orbit her front lawn. Her hedges had to be trimmed exactly 3.5 feet, her mailbox polished every Sunday, and heaven forbid anyone park on the curb. At first, it was little things. She'd remind Emma not to leave her recycling bin out past noon. Then she'd complain about our ramp being too unsightly. I brushed it off, thinking it was just Karen being Karen. I'd seen hundreds of people like her in my job, people who thrived on control because their personal lives were falling apart. Emma, bless her heart, tried to make peace. She'd leave Karen flowers, apologize even when she did nothing wrong. I told her, "Sweetheart, you don't owe that woman a single thing." She'd just smile and say, "Dad, kindness disarms people, but in Cedar Oaks, kindness wasn't armor. It was bait." I still remember the evening before it all began. The air smelled of rain and fresh-cut grass. We sat on the porch, laughing as thunder rolled in the distance. My wife brought out lemonade, and for a moment, everything felt right. I had no idea that across the street, behind her blinds, Karen was watching, taking notes, waiting, because by morning, a simple neighborhood misunderstanding would spiral into a criminal case, and my daughter, my kind, disabled daughter, would be the one Karen decided to destroy. Before we go deeper, tell me, have you ever met someone who smiled to your face? While plotting your downfall behind the curtain, it started with a knock on the door, sharp, precise, like a warning. When I opened it, Karen stood there, clipboard in hand, wearing that fake smile that never reached her eyes. Her perfume hit first, heavy, floral, suffocating, the kind people wear to cover up the stench of spite. "Good morning, Mr. Hall," she said sweetly. "We need to talk about your daughter." My guard went up instantly. "What about her?" Karen shifted her weight, tapping her pen. "Several residents have complained. She's been loitering near other people's yards. One neighbor even said she threatened his dog." I laughed, not out of humor but disbelief. "Emma, she can barely lift a grocery bag. She wouldn't hurt a fly?" Her smile didn't budge. "Well, perception matters, Mr. Hall. The HOA board takes safety very seriously. I'll be filing a notice today." I shut the door on her mid-sentence. That was her first strike, the seed of a story she was planting. I'd seen that tactic before in my line of work. Manipulators start with rumors, then build evidence around the lies they create. Within days, strange things began happening. Emma's ramp was vandalized, bolts loosened, paint scratched. Someone left a note on our doorstep. "Keep your crazy daughter inside." Then the police came. A noise complaint. Nothing major, just enough for Karen to peek out from her lawn chair as the cruiser lights flashed. She wanted the neighborhood to see us as trouble. My wife started losing sleep. "She's targeting us," she whispered one night. "Why?" I had no answer. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just an HOA issue. It was personal. Karen wanted power, control over every square inch of her world, and Emma's independence threatened that. Emma, though, refused to give in. "Dad, I'm not hiding," she told me, voice trembling but firm. "If she wants to hate me, that's her problem. Her courage broke me." I promised I'd protect her, that I'd handle it. But I underestimated Karen's reach. 2 weeks later, a neighbor's window was broken. The police report listed Emma's name, based on an anonymous witness. I confronted Karen outside her garden the next day. "You're behind this," I said. She tilted her head, pretending confusion. "Behind what, dear?" "Actions have consequences. Maybe you should teach your daughter that." Her smile lingered as she walked away, sunlight glinting off her sunglasses. And I swear in that reflection I saw exactly what she was. Not a neighbor. A predator. That was the day I realized Karen wasn't trying to make our lives miserable. She was trying to destroy them. The air in Cedar, Oaks grew heavier by the week, like every neighbor's smile was painted on over suspicion. The quiet suburb we'd chosen for peace had become a stage for gossip, and Karen was the director. It started small. Whispers stopped when Emma walked by. A mother pulled her son away as we passed. Even the mailman avoided our porch. I could feel the shift, that cold, collective fear that spreads when a lie takes root deep enough. Then came the HOA meeting. Karen's domain. We showed up, hoping to clear our name. But the moment we entered that community hall, the room went silent. Karen stood at the podium, pearl necklace gleaming under fluorescent light, pretending to keep order. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "We're here to discuss multiple complaints about disturbances involving one resident's daughter." Every eye turned to us. My daughter's hand trembled in mine. Karen displayed photos, blurry stills from a doorbell camera, a figure vaguely resembling Emma standing near a driveway at night. "Caught trespassing," she claimed. Then she read testimonies, statements clearly written by her friends. "She's unstable. She yells at kids. She scared my dog." Each sentence stabbed deeper. Emma's lip quivered, her voice breaking. "That's not me. I wasn't even outside that night." But Karen wasn't after truth. She was after humiliation. I rose, voice steady but cold. "You're fabricating this, Karen, and you're doing it to cover something up." "What are you hiding?" She blinked, mask cracking for half a second, then smiled again. "If you can't control your child, Mr. Hall, perhaps the law will." That was the moment the room shifted. People murmured, uneasy. A few sympathetic faces turned away, afraid to get involved. Karen had won the crowd through fear, not facts. After the meeting, someone had keyed my car. A deep, deliberate scratch from headlight to tail light. No witnesses, no evidence, just that same sick feeling of being watched. At night, I'd see Karen's silhouette at her window, blinds tilted open. Always facing our house, always waiting. My wife begged me to move. "Please, Mark," she said, voice cracking. "This place is cursed," but I couldn't leave, not yet. Not when the truth was being rewritten by a liar. I told her, let her dig her hole. I'll bury her with her own lies, but I was wrong. Because the next day, something happened that made every petty act look like child's play. Karen was about to cross the line from manipulation into crime. It happened on a Friday morning, the day that split our lives clean in half. I was halfway through a call at work when my phone buzzed nonstop. Unknown number. Then another. Then a text from my wife. "They took her." The police took Emma. I remember the sound of my chair hitting the floor as I ran out of the office. Every red light blurred past, my heart hammering louder than the sirens in my head. When I reached the station, Emma was in a holding room. Pale, shaking, mascara streaked down her cheeks. 2 officers stood outside, avoiding my gaze. One finally said, "She's been charged with property damage and assault." Assault? I nearly laughed. "She can't even run without her cane." He looked uncomfortable. The HOA president filed the report. "She claims your daughter attacked her. Karen." I forced myself to breathe. "Where's the evidence?" He gestured toward a security photo, a blurry image of someone in a hoodie swinging at another figure near Karen's porch. It could have been anyone, but the police didn't see that. They saw Karen's statement. She said your daughter yelled threats, that she's been stalking her. We found broken glass on Karen's property. The broken glass was from Karen's own garden lights. I'd helped install them. It hit me like a wave. This was staged. Every step, every lie leading here. Emma reached for me through tears. "Dad, I swear I didn't." "I know, sweetheart," I said, holding her trembling hand. "I know exactly who did. But when I demanded to see Karen, the desk sergeant told me she'd already filed for a restraining order against us. By nightfall, news spread across the neighborhood Facebook group. Local girl arrested for attacking HOA president. The comments were poison. Should have seen it coming. That family's trouble. Hope she gets help." My wife sat on the couch, clutching Emma's childhood photo. "She's ruining us," she whispered. I stared at the wall, but in my mind, I wasn't home. I was back in interrogation rooms watching criminals think they'd won. And I remembered the rule. When a liar feels untouchable, that's when they make their first real mistake. Karen thought she'd cornered us, but she'd just crossed into my world, a world where I didn't need permission to find the truth. That night, I opened a locked drawer, pulled out my old FBI credentials, and whispered, "You wanted a war? Karen, you just got one." The day after Emma's arrest, the house felt like a tomb. Her room still smelled faintly of lavender lotion and pencil shavings, the small details that make a home feel alive. But all I could hear was silence. My wife sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through news articles about our daughter, each one filled with lies Karen had planted. I'd seen setups before, in corruption cases, fraud rings and political cover-ups. But this time it was personal. Karen had built her story perfectly, fake witnesses, photos doctored just enough to pass inspection, and emotional testimony from a concerned neighbor. It was the kind of scheme that worked because it preyed on emotion, not logic. I needed evidence, but I couldn't use official bureau channels without exposing myself. So I went off-grid. I used an old network of trusted contacts, a local tech analyst, a retired detective, and one journalist who owed me a favor. Together, we started digging. The first breakthrough came fast. The timestamp on Karen's security footage didn't match her HOA camera log. It was edited. The footage had been spliced from 3 different nights. Then came the kicker. One of Karen's witnesses, a man named Lyle, had 2 prior fraud charges and a pending civil lawsuit. Financed by Karen's HOA fund. My pulse quickened. I was getting close. But I needed one final piece. Proof that Karen had manipulated the court. That night, I staked out her property from my SUV, parked down the street. The air was damp, the smell of wet asphalt heavy. Around 1:12 a.m., Karen's porch light flicked on. She stepped out, whispered into her phone, then handed an envelope to a man in a gray suit. I snapped the photos. Next morning, I traced the man's license plate to a private legal consultant, one who'd been disbarred 5 years earlier for evidence tampering. Gotcha. By the time the next court hearing came, I was ready. I sat quietly in the back row as Karen took the stand again, fake tears glistening. She looked like the perfect victim. But when the prosecutor presented her new evidence, another video file she'd supplied, I stood up and handed a sealed USB to the bailiff. "Your Honor," I said evenly, "you might want to see where that footage really came from." The judge frowned but nodded. The moment the real metadata flashed on the screen, showing her altered timestamps, Karen's confidence cracked. That was the turning point. The moment the hunter became the hunted. I didn't reveal who I was yet. Not to her, not to the court. I just watched her face tighten as the foundation she'd built began to crumble, because the trap had been set, and I was going to make sure Karen walked right into it. The morning of the sentencing felt like standing at the edge of a storm. Everything too quiet, too still, like the world itself was holding its breath. Emma sat beside me in the courtroom, wrists trembling, a soft brace around her hand where the cuffs had rubbed her skin raw. My wife clutched a tissue in one hand, her cross pendant in the other. Across the aisle sat Karen, dressed in pale blue like innocence itself. Her lawyer whispered something and she laughed, actually laughed. Before the judge walked in, all rise. The judge's gavel struck, echoing through my chest like a gunshot. State versus Emma Hall. Karen's testimony came first. Crocodile tears, shaky voice. She came to my home that night. She threatened me, said I'd pay for ruining her life. I feared for my safety. I clenched my jaw so hard I could hear my pulse. The lies rolled effortlessly off her tongue. Then came the evidence, the video she'd submitted before I'd exposed its tampering. Somehow, she'd produced new footage overnight. Different angle. Different timestamp. My contact later told me she had a friend in the courthouse tech division. I wanted to shout, to stand and expose it all. But as an FBI agent, I knew timing mattered. One wrong move could blow everything. I needed her to overplay her hand. The prosecutor rested, and the defense attorney, a young public defender who clearly hadn't handled someone like Karen, stumbled through his notes. He didn't know about my investigation. He didn't know about the files I'd gathered. So Emma sat there, helpless, convicted by lies and fear. When the judge called for closing statements, Karen's lawyer went on about community safety, mental instability, and the need for accountability. Then the verdict came. On the charge of assault and property damage, guilty, sentenced to 10 years in state correctional facility, my wife gasped. Emma broke down, sobbing so hard she nearly fell. I caught her before the officers led her away, whispering, "Stay strong. I'll fix this." Karen turned around, lips curling into a faint smirk. That same smug expression she'd worn since the day she first knocked on our door. Something inside me snapped, but not with rage, with precision. Because in that exact moment, Karen made her biggest mistake. As she walked past me, she whispered under her breath, "Guess you should have kept your freak daughter inside." What she didn't know was that every inch of that courtroom, from the hallway to her smug little face, was recorded. On my hidden lapel cam, I turned to face her, calm, cold, calculated. "You just confessed?" "Karen." Her smirk faded. "Excuse me?" I leaned closer. "You think I'm just her father? You really should have checked my background before you declared war." And for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. That was the day my daughter lost her freedom. But it was also the day Karen lost her control, because I wasn't just fighting as a father anymore. I was fighting as an agent of the law. And I was about to turn this entire case inside out. Before you hear what happened next, tell me, if someone framed your child, would you stay quiet? Or would you burn their lies to the ground? The week after the sentencing felt unreal, like we were trapped in a dream that refused to end. Emma was gone. The house was silent, her bedroom left untouched, the half-finished painting on her easel, her favorite lavender hoodie draped over the chair. Every corner of the home echoed her absence. My wife barely spoke. She'd wake up crying in the middle of the night, whispering our daughter's name as if calling her home could make it true. The smell of coffee filled the mornings, but no one drank it. Even the dog waited by the door every evening, tail still wagging, expecting Emma to come back. But she wouldn't. Not yet. Outside, Cedar Oaks pretended nothing happened. Lawns were still trimmed, mailboxes polished, neighbors waved like life was normal. But I saw the truth in their eyes, guilt, shame, and fear. They'd let Karen turn them into spectators of injustice. And Karen? She was thriving. She'd been interviewed by the local paper. HOA president heroically stands against neighborhood violence. Her picture was plastered across the front page, hands folded, haloed by sunlight. The article called her courageous. It made me sick. At the bureau, I'd seen criminals cover their tracks, but none so smugly. She thought she'd beaten the system, framed a disabled girl, and walked away untouchable. But what she didn't know was that her little performance in court had left fingerprints all over the evidence chain. So I went back to work, quietly, methodically. I replayed her courtroom whisper, synced it to the lapel cam's timestamp, then ran a cross-reference on the new footage she'd submitted overnight. The file's metadata linked back to an external flash drive, one belonging to the courthouse tech employee I'd seen on her porch. It was enough to reopen a shadow investigation. But I needed one more push, one undeniable link tying Karen to criminal manipulation. Late one night, I visited the evidence locker under a bureau contacts clearance. The surveillance files Karen had turned in had all been tampered with. Same codec patterns, same editing signature. Whoever helped her left digital fingerprints too. The storm was brewing. I could feel it. I stood outside her house one evening, watching from across the street as she watered her roses, pretending to be a saint. She had no idea the world she built was about to collapse. I whispered to myself, "You sentenced my daughter to 10 years. Karen, now it's your turn to serve time, because this wasn't over, not by a long shot." The first break in the case came from an unexpected place, the same precinct that had arrested my daughter. Detective Alvarez, a sharp and quietly skeptical man, called me one afternoon. "Agent Hall," he said carefully, "I did some digging on that HOA president of yours. You might want to see this. We met at a coffee shop off Main Street." He slid a file across the table, his tone low. "Your neighbor's been paying a courthouse tech under the table. Looks like she bought him a new car right around the time the evidence appeared." I opened the file. Bank transfers, emails, even screenshots of encrypted messages between Karen and the tech. My heart hammered as I flipped each page. "That's our smoking gun." Alvarez leaned back. "I'm not officially on this. You didn't get this from me, but I don't like seeing a kid get railroaded. By that evening, I had everything I needed to take it federal. I reactivated my old clearance and submitted an internal misconduct report, anonymously at first through back channels. Within hours, the Bureau's corruption unit picked it up. The investigation spread fast. Search warrants were issued quietly, without tipping Karen off. They found forged timestamp files, payment records, and fake witness statements saved under her HOA drive. Her committee wasn't just a group of neighbors. It was a web of people she controlled with favors and fear. While the Bureau built the case, I visited Emma. The prison's visiting room was cold, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. When she saw me, she tried to smile, but her eyes were tired. "Dad." "They won't listen to me." I took her hand through the glass. "They will, trust me. I've got something cooking." Her voice broke. "She said I'll die here. That nobody cares." That did it. Any remaining restraint in me snapped. "She won't win, sweetheart. She's not God. She's a fraud. And I'm about to prove it." The next week, a raid was conducted on the courthouse tech's home. He confessed everything. Karen had bribed him to alter security footage, destroy exculpatory files, and submit fake community statements. By morning, it was national news. HOA president under federal investigation for evidence tampering. The neighborhood that once whispered about my daughter now whispered about her accuser. Karen tried to play the victim again, holding a trembling press conference. But this time, nobody believed her. When she saw me standing behind the cameras, arms crossed, badge visible for the first time, she froze. The color drained from her face. That was the first time Karen realized she wasn't up against a neighbor anymore. She was up against the FBI. The second courtroom felt nothing like the first. This time, the air wasn't heavy with despair. It crackled with tension. The press lined the hallways, microphones flashing. Reporters whispered phrases like corruption, scandal, and evidence tampering. The same courthouse that once condemned my daughter was now about to Judge the woman who destroyed her. So, Karen walked in flanked by her attorney. Face painted with that same arrogance, but her eyes told a different story now. The confidence was gone. She'd traded her tailored blue blazer for a nervous twitch, her hands gripping a trembling water bottle. I sat in the front row, wearing my bureau suit for the first time since retirement. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about exposure. State of California versus Karen Whitmore, the clerk announced. Charges: perjury, falsification of evidence, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to defraud the court. She turned her head slightly toward me, as if daring me to look away. I didn't. The prosecutor laid out the case piece by piece. The tampered footage, the bribes, the fake witnesses, the anonymous community complaints. Every shred of Karen's empire crumbled under sworn testimony. Then came the highlight, the video from my hidden lapel cam. The screen flickered to life. The courtroom hushed. Karen's voice echoed through the speakers, her whisper cutting through the silence. Guess you should have kept your freak daughter inside. She went pale. Her lawyer jumped up. Objection. That's entrapment. Overruled, the judge said flatly. The jury watched her face, the smugness fading into panic. That one line did more damage than any evidence file could. It showed motive, malice, intent. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand, my badge gleaming under the lights. Mr. Hall, the prosecutor began, why didn't you reveal your identity earlier? I took a breath. Because I wanted to catch her in her natural state, unfiltered, unguarded, the way she's been with my daughter from the start. If I'd walked in flashing a badge, she would have played the victim again. Karen muttered under her breath. You think this changes anything? I met her eyes. It changes everything. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank transfers, forged documents. Even her HOA treasurer testified that Karen had misused neighborhood funds to pay for her legal consultants. When the prosecution rested, you could feel the room's collective shift. The same neighbors who once believed her were now glaring at her in disgust. Karen's lawyer gave one final, desperate plea. My client made mistakes, but she was only protecting her community. The judge's voice cut through. Protecting your community does not mean destroying an innocent girl's life. Karen's lips quivered. The gavel struck once. Guilty on all counts. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My wife squeezed my hand. I felt tears sting my eyes, not of sadness, but release. The judge continued. For her role in falsifying evidence, obstructing justice, and defamation of a disabled minor, this court sentences Karen Whitmore to 15 years in federal prison. 15 years. Longer than what she gave my daughter. Karen's knees buckled. The bailiff caught her before she hit the floor. Her voice cracked. You can't do this! I was the victim! I stood as they cuffed her hands, the same way they'd cuffed Emma's. Only this time, justice was on the right side of the bars. The flash of cameras, the echo of footsteps, the hum of whispers, all faded as I turned toward the courtroom exit. I didn't look back, because this story wasn't about her anymore. It was about what came next. The courthouse steps were swarming with reporters when we walked out that afternoon. The flash of cameras, the chaos of shouted questions, all of it blurred into a distant hum. All I could feel was the weight of the moment. 10 years of pain for my daughter erased in one verdict. Emma stood beside me, finally free. Her hair had grown longer, thinner. Prison does that to you. But her eyes carried that same quiet strength she'd always had. She squeezed my hand. You did it, Dad? I smiled faintly. No, sweetheart. We did. Behind us, Karen was being escorted through the side exit, her wrists bound, her once perfect posture wilted into defeat. The crowd turned, cell phones raised. Her sunglasses couldn't hide the tears this time. I walked up just close enough for her to hear me through the noise. You remember what you told me in that courtroom, Karen? That I should have kept my daughter inside? She lifted her head, defiant even in disgrace. You think you're better than me? She spat. I leaned in, my voice low, steady, the tone I used on men who thought they were untouchable. No, just smarter. And unlike you, I protect my family by telling the truth. Her expression cracked. Fury, humiliation, Then the bitter realization of what she'd lost. Power, control, her empire of fear, dismantled by the very justice system she tried to manipulate. As the bailiffs led her away, I felt nothing. No triumph, no vengeance, just the quiet weight of justice finally doing what it was meant to. Later that evening, I returned home with Emma and my wife. The sun was setting, painting the neighborhood in soft gold. For the first time in months, no blinds twitched. No one stared. The silence wasn't judgment anymore. It was peace. Emma sat on the porch steps, looking out at the sky. "Do you think she'll ever understand what she did?" I took a deep breath. Some people don't change, honey. But the law changed her fate, and that's enough. She nodded slowly, the wind brushing her hair across her face. "I just want to live again." "You will," I said. "Starting now." The following morning, the local news played a clip of Karen's sentencing. Her HOA board had been dissolved, and the court had ordered restitution for every family she'd bullied or fined without cause. The very neighborhood she ruled through fear was rebuilding itself, freer, fairer, better. For me, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. My daughter had been silenced. Now she had her voice back. "Before you hear how it all ended, tell me, if justice finally came for the person who destroyed your family, would you forgive them? Or walk away like I did?" 6 months later, Cedar Oaks didn't look the same, and neither did we. The for sale sign that once sat crooked in Karen's yard had been taken down after the new family moved in. A young couple with a baby, the kind of people who smiled for real. The roses she'd once pruned obsessively had withered, the soil cracked and dry. Justice, in its quiet way, had turned her paradise into dust. Emma was back home. The sound of her laughter returned first, faint, uncertain, but real. She'd enrolled again in her art program, painting scenes that looked nothing like the cold walls of a prison. Her latest piece hung in the living room, a storm breaking over sunlight. She titled it Freedom. I watched her paint sometimes, the way her hands steadied more each day. She didn't talk much about what happened, but she didn't have to. Every stroke, every color was its own form of healing. My wife, too, found peace again. She'd started volunteering at the same shelter Emma once loved. The house smelled of life again, coffee, lavender, and lemon candles instead of fear. As for me, I finally let go of the badge. I turned in my credentials to the bureau a month after the trial. For years, my job had been about catching criminals in the dark. But I'd learned something through this fight. Sometimes the real evil hides behind smiling faces and white picket fences. One evening, we stood together in the backyard, watching fireflies spark over the grass. Emma looked up at me and asked softly, "Do you think she'll ever change?" I thought about Karen, sitting in a federal cell, stripped of her titles, facing the silence she used to inflict on others. "Maybe," I said. "But that's not our burden anymore." She smiled, a real one this time. "Then let's live." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft orange and blue. I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't angry. I wasn't plotting. I was just grateful that truth had prevailed. Grateful that my daughter could breathe freely again. Grateful that the world, despite its cruelty, still had a way of setting things right. Before I went inside, I looked once more toward the old HOA office across the street. The sign had been removed, replaced by a small plaque that read, "Cedar Oaks, a community rebuilt on kindness." I smiled, whispering to myself, "Justice doesn't erase the past, but it sure can rewrite the ending." And with that, I closed the door. Not just to my house, but to the chapter that nearly destroyed us. Because this time, the story ended where it should have begun, with peace.